Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast special edition show. I apologize for not doing the regular show today, but instead you got a special preview of the first rounds of the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs, respectively. Um, we'll begin with the NBA playoffs, and then when it comes to the um, playing stuff with the NBA for the 8 seeds, I will do a just in case the other side wins type of thing. So, like I said, we'll start the NBA and we'll start in the Eastern Conference. Your 1 seed is the Detroit Pistons, who have had a fantastic year and still were the 1 seed in spite of losing Cade Cunningham for a good amount of time. And they'll be playing the winner of tomorrow night's Orlando Charlotte game. So the best guy in either of the series would be Cade Cunningham easily, in my opinion. The coaching advantage in this series, or in either or, I would say JB Bickerstaff in the Orlando series, but you can make a case for Charles Lee for Charlotte, but I'm going to say JB for um either or. Storyline of the series. If it's Orlando, I'm going to say could this group finally get it going or make this competitive after what was a very disappointing season for the Magic, in which a lot of people thought that this was the third best team in the Eastern Conference before the year. I forget where I had them. I think I had them fourth or fifth. So I thought they would be a little disappointing, but I didn't think they would be this disappointing. And then if it's Charlotte, to me, the subplot of the series would be, will there be any more altercations after the big fight that these two teams endured during the regular season, which caused a couple of suspensions on each side. So I think the more interesting series, because of the brawl, it would be Charlotte. But Orlando, like I said, it's been very disappointing this year. So I'm not so sure about that. How competitive they would be. Although they had high expectations before the season. So I do expect the Hornets to win tomorrow night. I do think it's going to be Charlotte. And I'm rooting for Charlotte. And they would be more fun, and I think they would give the Pistons more problems. But Orlando, Paulo Banchero is better than anybody on Charlotte. Although Con Knipple and Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball have really carried the Hornets at this point, but Paulo right now is a better player than all three of those guys. So pick for the series. If it's the Magic, I think it's a sweep of the Pistons. And if it's Charlotte, I think it goes 5. Although I originally said when I had Doug on the podcast that I thought the Charlotte upset the Pistons. But I thought that thinking that Cade Cunningham was still possibly going to be out. And I do think that the nerves really showed in that Heat game, in a game that they probably lose if that trip doesn't happen. So Detroit in 5 over Charlotte. Detroit sweep over Orlando. All right, your 2-7 in the East is the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Really good series. In the Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum era, these two teams have faced off in the playoffs before. I do not recall what years, but I do remember Philly taking them to 7 the year Harden was there. I want to say that was the year Ime Udoka was the coach. And Boston lost to the Warriors in the finals. So that's 2022. Because I remember that went 7. And, of course, James Harden choked in the game 7. And he was on Philly. But this is a different Philly team. And it's a different Boston team, too. A lot of different guys on each team, but the stars are still aligned with, or some of the big stars are still aligned with Embiid and Tatum and Brown. Best guy in the series. Jaylen Brown has been the best player among the 3 this year. So I'm going to say Jaylen Brown. But if this was a year ago, we'd be saying Jason Tatum. 2 years ago, we were saying Jason Tatum. Even 3 years ago, we're probably saying Joel Embiid. Like this year, the best guy in the series is Jaylen Brown. The better coach. This is an interesting one because Nick Nurse has won a title, and so has Joe Mazzulla. And I think that Joe Mazzulla is underappreciated because he has a ring, and I still think that people look at him as like, oh, they blew that series against the Knicks last year, and they blew that Miami series a couple years ago. But I'm going to say Joe Mazzulla for the coaching advantage. Storyline of the series. Will Joel Embiid come back in this series and be healthy and productive? Because if he does, I think this can be a long series. And if not, then I think it's a short series. And the pick. I'm going to say Boston in 5. But that's on the premise that I don't expect to see Joel Embiid. It's kind of like a team we're going to get into in the West, which we're going to talk about in a couple of moments. But I do think that it's going to be the Celtics in 5. Over the what was I saying? The Sixers. All right, your 3-6 in the East is the New York Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks. Best player in the series, I think this is easy, and it's Jalen Brunson. Coaching advantage. Some may say Mike Brown. Some may say Quinn Snyder. But Quinn Snyder had a couple of playoff chokes in the playoffs with the Jazz over the last couple of years. And then I thought Mike Brown got a lot out of those Kings teams. The Beam years, and they stupidly fired him. So that's a hard one. I think people will say Quinn Snyder. But, like I said, I feel like Quinn Snyder's underachieved, and I think he's just a name at this point. So I'm going to say Mike Brown. But you could argue, you could make a case for Quinn Snyder. Storyline of the series. I think the storyline, I know these two teams met in the playoffs 5 years ago, and Atlanta won in 5. But that was when they had Trae Young at the peak of his powers. And then they made the conference finals because Ben Simmons took a shit in Game 6 when he was on Philly. So this is an interesting one in terms of storyline of the series. But I'm going to say, can the Hawks... could Jalen Johnson emerge as a super duper star in this series? And can you win a couple of rounds with him as your best player? I know CJ McCollum's been their go-to guy at the end of the games, but he was a second fiddle on those Portland teams back in the day with Dame Lillard. And he really hasn't been in a big game in a long time. So for me, if Atlanta is to upset the Knicks, I think Jalen Johnson has to be the best guy in the series. Series pick. I'm going to say the Knicks in 6. I think this is not going to be an easy series for the Knicks. I think the bracket broke badly for the Knicks considering that the Orlando Magic shit the bed on the last day of the regular season against the G League Celtics. And, or when the Celtics are playing their G League guys. And, so I do think that the Knicks win, but it won't be easy. Knicks in 6. I won't be surprised if it's 1-1 after 1, 2-2 after 2. Knicks win Game 5 at home in a blowout. And in Game 6, Jalen Brunson says night-night to the Hawks like he did to the Pistons last year. So I'm going to say Knicks in 6. And then your 4-5 in the East is the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors. Best player in the series, Donovan Mitchell. Some may say James Harden, but you're a fool of yourself if you really think that at this point in his career. But I'm going to say Donovan Mitchell. The coaching advantage in this series. This is an interesting one. I know Darko Rajkovic has done a fantastic job with the Raptors this year, but Kenny Atkinson's a much better coach than Darko, so I'm going to say Kenny Atkinson. So the subplot of the series. I think the subplot of the series is merely the subplot of the Cavaliers is could James Harden shed some demons. I think he can for at least this series, but for the series in general, my biggest storyline is how will the Raptors react to being in the playoffs for the first time in a long time with this current group of players and some of the ex-Knicks on there. So if they played the Knicks, it would have been kind of interesting from a storyline standpoint, but I think it would have been an easier series for the Knicks. So that's kind of interesting. Scotty Barnes' first time in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be interesting to see how this Raptors team reacts and if they will be competitive here. Series pick, I'm going to say the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games. Toronto wins 1 at home, maybe 3 or 4. But I'm going to say Cavs in 5. They're the better team, and they're hard to guard, and I don't trust the Raptors at all. So, Cavaliers in 5. If they played the Hawks, that would have been a more interesting series for them. Just like this Hawks series from an on-the-court standpoint, it's more interesting for the Knicks than a series against the Raptors would have been. Okay, to the West. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they'll be playing the winner of the Golden State Phoenix game tomorrow night, which is going to be very, very interesting. Because it's Steph Curry and company playoff spot on the line, and then Devin Booker hasn't been to the playoffs in a couple of years. Or wait, they were in it last year. I feel like they haven't been in it in a while, but Devin Booker in the playoffs again, and in a year where nobody thought they were going to be in the playoffs. So, very interesting game for sure. At gunpoint, I think it's more interesting if Golden State's in it, but I think it's going to be Phoenix. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's best player in the series, whether they play Golden State or Phoenix. Coaching advantage, it's Mark Daniel over Steve Kerr and over Jordan Ott. Storyline of the series, like I said, Oklahoma City, Golden State, I think would have more storylines because is this Curry's last hurrah? And is this Draymond's last series where Steve Kerr? It's more about the Golden State from a subplot standpoint than it is about the Thunder. But say if it's the Suns, would be, can they continue to overachieve, and could Jordan Ott make a name himself for national fans in terms of a coach and keeping his team competitive? All right, series winner. I'm gonna say the Thunder win in 4 either way. They sweep either Golden State or Phoenix. Although I think more people are looking forward to seeing Stephen Curry than Devin Booker in the play against the Thunder. All right, the 2 seed, the San Antonio Spurs against the 7 seed Portland Trailblazers. Best player in the series, Victor Wembanyama. Duh. And then coaching advantage. I'm gonna say Mitch Johnson over Tiago Splitter, although both coaches have done fantastic this season, considering some of the circumstances, especially in Portland, because Chauncey Billups started the year as their coach, and he was out after 1 game because he got arrested. So, Tiago Splitter took over and did a fantastic job. Storyline of the series. Will the lights be too bright for Wemby? I think that's more of a long-term question for San Antonio, but it's worth wondering right now. But I do think that the subplot here is, could Denny Avia make a name for himself, and can Scoot Henderson finally show flashes of being the number 3 pick in the draft that everybody hyped him up to be? All right, my pick in the series, I'm going to say the Spurs in 5. I think Portland still's won at home, but they have Victor Wembanyama. The Blazers don't. All right, the 3-6 in the West. The Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves, to me, hands down the best first-round series. Best player in the series, we know the answer is Nikola Jokic. Although Minnesota fans will say Anthony Edwards. Coaching advantage in the series, I'm going to say that will go to Chris Finch, because the Denver coach, Dave Adelman, really hasn't been there before. And obviously, another subplot here is that his father was Rick Adelman, the former coach of the Timberwolves. So that's kind of a small world situation there with Adelman with Denver. Storyline of the series. Could Denver finally, and I mean finally, slay the dragon against the Timberwolves? So they lost to them in 24 in the second round. And then in their title run in 22-23, they played him in the first round and beat him in 5. So can they recover the demons of a couple years ago, Denver? Or can Minnesota do it again? So my pick for the series, I think it's the best series of the round 1. Denver in 7. And I bet that at plus 380. And then I bet Cavs in 5 plus 240, Knicks in 6 plus 470, Spurs in 5 plus 185. And then the next series, which I'm going to talk about, Lakers Houston. Best player in the series. I mean, I could get to the series prices. I'll do that in a second. Lakers Houston. This is a complicated one because obviously who would have been the best player in the series, is hurt and probably isn't playing in the series. So this is a crazy take. The best player in the series is LeBron James. Yeah, you heard me. LeBron James, remember him? Yeah. Best healthy player in the series, LeBron James. If Luka Doncic was healthy, he's the easy answer. Coaching advantage, I'm going to say JJ Redick's done a better job this year than Ime Udoka. Although Ime Udoka has taken the Celtics to the finals. So he has that going for him. So I'm going to say JJ Redick. Although Ime does have a case. Storyline of the series, will Luka and Austin Reeves come back in this series at some point? And if so, then that makes it a hell of a lot more interesting. My pick, I'm going to say the Rockets in 6 games. That is plus 270. I really don't have time to do like the betting stuff. But I'll just give out what I bet. Alright, so there you have it for the NBA playoffs, and now we'll do the Stanley Cup playoffs. We will start Eastern Conference, Atlantic City Division winner Buffalo Sabres against the wild card Boston Bruins. Alright, so this is gonna be very interesting for sure. So the best player in the series, David Pastrnak. Although you can make a case for Rasmus Dahlin of the Sabres. You can make a case for a couple other guys as well. The goalie advantage. I'm going to say Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen, because he's been money for the Sabres, although Alex Lyon's done a nice job too, but I'm going to say Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen for Buffalo for the goalie advantage. The coaching advantage. Lindy Ruff has done a fantastic job as head coach of the Buffalo Sabres. Marco Strom's done a great job as well. I'm going to go with Lindy Ruff. Storyline of the series. Could Buffalo finally win a playoff series for the first time in a long time? They're in the playoffs for the first time since 2011, but they can actually win a series. I think they can. But will they? No. I'm going with an upset. I'm going with the Boston Bruins. They're like plus 145 to win the series. I have them in 6 games at plus 550. All right, Atlantic Division 2 seed Tampa Bay Lightning, 3 seed Montreal Canadiens. Best player in the series. You can make a case for Nick Suzuki. You can make a case for Nikita Kucherov. You can make a case for Andrei Vasilevsky. But I'm going to say Kucherov. And I think there's a possibility Kucherov wins the Hart Trophy. He's that good. He probably won't because his name's not Connor McDavid. Goalie advantage. Vasilevsky for sure. Jacob Dorpes had some moments this year, but to me he's not proven. And Vasilevsky has just been money this season and his whole career. And he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. Coaching advantage. Of course, it's John Cooper. Of course it is. Although Martin St. Louis has done a great job with the Montreal Canadiens. Series pick. Lightning in 5. I have that plus 310. Like I said, deeper team, more poised for the playoffs, and the experience. To the Metro Division. Your Metro winning Carolina Hurricanes against the second wildcard Ottawa Senators. Carolina obviously has home ice throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs. So obviously Ottawa's in the postseason for the first time in a while. Carolina's been the best team in this division for a long time now, it seems like. So, best player in the series. Sebastian Aho. I know Tim Stützle's had a better season, arguably. 34-49. But Aho's a better player. He's more suited for postseason hockey and has been in big games before. The goalie advantage. It has to be Brandon Bussi. He's been outstanding for Carolina this year. And I know Linus Ullmark's been in the playoffs before, but he's also choked in the playoffs before. Brandon Bussi for this year. Coaching advantage. I'm gonna say Ron Vindemore over Ottawa's coach. Travis Green. Storyline of the series. To me, it's the goalie on Carolina, Bussi. Whether he could become like a hot goalie. That's more of a long-term thing, but can it start here? Will he turn into a pumpkin or will he rise to the occasion? To me, this is about Brandon Bussi, the storyline of the series. And by the way, storyline of Montreal Tampa, to me, is whether Montreal can make this series more competitive. And it's Martin St. Louis coaching against his old team. That's a huge deal. Oh my God, how did I not think of that? Yeah, the storyline of that series is Martin St. Louis against his old team. And in the storyline of this series to me is Brandon Bussi, whether he could avoid turning into a pumpkin. Because I know Linus Ullmark did that against who the hell did they play? Florida that year when they were the President's Trophy winners. All right, series pick. Did I bet it? No. I'm gonna say Carolina. I want to say they sweep Ottawa. Because I just think they're that much better. Yeah, Carolina sweep. I think there's going to be a sweep. Carolina sweep is my guess. Like I said, they're better than Ottawa. And I said Lightning in 5 over Montreal. Like I said, I just think their talent is just better. Maybe Montreal wins 1 at home. All right, in the Metro Division, 2 seed Pittsburgh Penguins, 3 seed Philadelphia Flyers. These two teams haven't met in the postseason in a long time. I don't remember the last time the Flyers were in the playoffs. Probably the Torts, possibly. I really don't remember. And then Pittsburgh's in the playoffs for the first time in a couple of years as well. So the Flyers were last year, 6th the year before, 22-23, they were 7th. They have not been in the playoffs in a long time. They haven't been in the playoffs since before COVID. The last time they were in the playoffs was COVID. Philly. And then Pittsburgh did not make it last year. They came in 7th. The year before, they missed, but they were close. They were 5th in the division, but they missed. 22-23, they came in 5th. But they missed the postseason that year, too. They missed it by a couple points over the Islanders. And then last time they were in it, they were the 3 seed and lost to the Rangers. Wow. Pittsburgh hasn't been in it in 4 years. Philly since COVID. So neither of these teams have been in it in a long time. That's a storyline. Best player in the series. Come on. I know I'm talking like it's 2015. I said this earlier when I was talking about the Lakers and who I think the best guy in that series is probably going to be. And of course I'm talking about the great Sidney Crosby. He only played in 68 games this year, by the way. Although some may say Travis Kelce. I think it's Crosby. Quite frankly, not close. The goaltender advantage in the series. I'm going to say Philadelphia has it with Dan Vladar. The coaching advantage. I think that Dan Muse has done a fantastic job at Pittsburgh. And Rick Tocchet's done a great job with Philly. I think both these guys have done fantastic. I give it to Tocchet because he's had playoff experience as a coach. So storyline of the series. To me, it's the fact that Crosby's in the postseason for the first time in 4 years. Could have beaten the Rangers that year. They were up 3-1 against them. The Rangers came back. Philly hasn't been in the playoffs since COVID. To me, it's the drought of the 2 Pennsylvania teams not being in the postseason. The Flyers have been terrible for a long time. That's like, it's been since COVID since they were in the playoffs. Like, that's crazy. And to me, it's this post-Claude Giroux era of the Flyers and how far Rick Tocchet can take this group. And my pick for the series, I think it's going to be Pittsburgh in 6. I think it's going to be competitive. I think that Crosby just knows how to play in these big games and knows how it goes. So I'm going to say the Penguins in 6 games. All right, to the West. So the Colorado Avalanche will be playing against the second wild card in the West, the Los Angeles Kings. Okay, this is easy. Best player in the series is the one and only Nathan MacKinnon, who has been around for a long time, Stanley Cup champion. In play for the Hart Trophy. Is it gonna be him or Nikita Kucherov? I think it's gonna be Kucherov, but I do think it will be Kucherov, not McKinnon, although McKinnon's right there. The goaltending advantage in this series, I'm going to say Scotty Wedgwood. Although Mackenzie Blackwood's been great for Colorado, too. But I'm going to say Scott Wedgwood is the goalie that has the advantage here. Coaching advantage, Jared Bednar, for me, over DJ Smith, who took over March 1st. And then they go and, is that before or after they got Artemi Panarin? They got Panarin earlier in the year. 27 points in 25 games for the Kings. Storyline of the series. To me, the Kings are a team that very up and down, almost missed the playoffs. But we'll see. If they go on a little run and how competitive this series can be. So pick for the series. I am going to say the Colorado Avalanche sweep. I think we're going to have a sweep here. They're way better than the Kings. I know the Kings have some good goalie play, and they have the veterans that have been there on that, like Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. But those guys are kind of washed up. They're not a good offensive team, so I think it's a sweep. All right, in the same bracket, Central Division, 2 seed Dallas Stars and the 3 seed Minnesota Wild. This should be a really good series. Best player in the series. I'm going to say the best guy in this series is Minnesota Wild forward Kirill Kaprizov. Although Jason Robertson does have a case too. He's played 82 games. Kaprizov, 78. But you could definitely make a case for Jason Robertson, but I think it's Kirill Kaprizov, best guy in the series. The goalie advantage. I'm going to give that to Jake Ottinger of the Dallas Stars, who has been there and done that. It's one of my favorite goalies in the league. The coaching advantage. This is an interesting one. I'm going to say that goes to John Hines, who I think has done a great job getting a lot of the Wild, but Glenn Gulutzin, to me, has not had a good history in the playoffs. He lost in round 1 when he was the head coach of the Flames in 16-17 and got swept. And he used to be the coach of the Stars in 2011-12 and 12-13, and he stunk. So, it has to be John Hines, who I think has done a decent job in the playoffs as a coach in the past. Storyline of the series. I think the subplot of the series, these two teams have played each other a lot in the playoffs over the years, I feel like. They didn't play each other last year. They played Colorado and Winnipeg and then Edmonton. They lost in the conference finals. But yeah, I know they've seen each other in the playoffs. In 22-23, they played each other. And they won in 6. I think that's going to be the same result here. And I do think the subplot of the series is, can Minnesota finally get to the second round? Because I feel like they have not been far in the playoffs, like, ever. I feel like they're always a first round exit. Could they get over the hump and beat a heavily favored Dallas Stars team? I'm going to say no. Dallas Stars in 6. I'm just going to I just want to pull up my bets real quick. And I know I had Dallas in 6. I just forget the number. 4-2, 5-1. All right, and then to the Pacific Division, we have the 1 seed Vegas Golden Knights and the wild card number 1 in the West, the Utah Mammoth. Okay, best player in the series has to be Jack Eichel. He's finally become the superstar that everybody expected him to be. Clayton Keller had a great year for the Mammoth. So has Nick Schmaltz. And then Mitch Marner's been a great ad for Vegas. Goaltending advantage in the series. I'm going to say that goes to Akira Schmid of the Vegas Golden Knights. To me, Aiden Hill just hasn't been that good this year. I know Karl Vajelka's been really good for Utah, but I trust Schmid a little more. Coaching advantage. I think you guys know where I'm going with that, and that is Andre Tourigny, who I think has done a fantastic job with Utah this year. And I just I know John Tortorella's had more history, so the answer probably is John Tortorella. But he really hasn't been there the whole year. It would have been Bruce Cassidy had they kept him. I just think they made a mistake. But that said, I do expect Vegas to win the series. I have them 4-2 at plus 420 to win the series. And I do think the subplot of the series is could Tourigny get the Mammoth finally over the top over John Tortorella in Vegas? And it'd be their first play. Can they get their first playoff series win since the move? And they'll be their first playoff series win in a long time too. But Tortorella on paper has the coaching advantage, although I do want to say Tourigny has it, but I guess that's just the Torts hater and me coming out, but it's Torts. I do want to say Tourigny. But I think Golden Knights in 6 games. And then last but not least, the 3-2 in the Pacific Division, the Edmonton Oilers against the Anaheim Ducks. We all know who the best player in the series is. He's the best player in the NHL. He's the best player in professional sports right now, arguably, other than Shohei Ohtani. And that is, of course, Mr. Connor McDavid. The goaltending advantage. And, of course, McDavid's also in play for the Hart Trophy. So it's McDavid, Kucherov, and McKinnon. It's probably going to be McDavid. Although it should be Kucherov. So, goaltending advantage. I'm going to say Connor Ingram of the Oilers. I know Stuart Skinner's had some moments over the years for the Oilers, but I'm going to say Connor Ingram. And Anaheim's goaltending stinks with Lucas Dostal as their starter. They should have kept John Gibson, to be honest with you. Then they'd have a better chance in the series, in my opinion. So, where did I leave off? Oh, coaching advantage. I'm going to give the coaching advantage to Chris Knobloch over Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville really hasn't been around in a while. This is his best coaching job in a while. I understand that completely. But Knobloch's been to the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years and came close to winning it last year. Storyline of the series. Joel Quenneville against his old general manager. So, little Chicago Blackhawks 2010's reunion with Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville. So, that's a very interesting storyline of this series. And another interesting storyline is the guy that should have been the Ranger coach in Chris Knobloch, or should be the Rangers coach in Chris Knobloch, or should have been, against another former Ranger who should have never been traded in Chris Kreider. So it's a Rangers reunion and a Blackhawks reunion in this series. My pick. I think it's going to be a longer series than people expect because I do think Chris Kreider is a big game player. Joel Quenneville is a good coach. Edmonton in 6 is my pick. And I'm going to see... they don't have the correct score out, but Edmonton's a minus 225 favorite. So again, the NHL round 1 picks are as followed. From the top of this bracket, I'm looking at to the bottom. Boston over Buffalo in 6. And I know Buffalo's favored. Tampa over Montreal in 5. Carolina sweeps the Senators. Pittsburgh over Philly in 6. Colorado over the Kings in a sweep. Dallas over Minnesota in 6. Vegas over Utah in 6. I think that goes 6. I think Utah can steal a couple home games. And maybe that game 6 goes OT and Vegas just wins it based on their experience. And then Edmonton over Anaheim in 6. So I have no 7 gamers. And then to recap the NBA ones, Detroit either sweeps Orlando or beats the Sixers not the Sixers, the Charlotte Hornets in 5. Cleveland over Toronto in 5. Knicks over Atlanta in 6. Boston over Philadelphia in 5. But I don't feel good about it because of the Embiid wild card. And even if Embiid comes back, maybe they win 1 home game. But even if he doesn't come back, I could see like Tyrese Maxey going off. And then in the West, Oklahoma City sweeps the Phoenix Golden State winner. Houston over the Lakers in 6. Denver over Minnesota in an absolute classic 7-game series. And then San Antonio over Portland in 5. And I think Portland has that 1 home win to show off to their fans. All right, so there you have it for the 2026 NBA and Stanley Cup playoff predictions, preview, and predictions. And I may be back to the regular show tomorrow. If not, then Monday.